If you want insight into how I keep up with everything happening in the news, stick around until the end of this video for an important offer from Ground News. You know, it's nice to watch Republicans absolutely debase themselves. Self-humiliation, self-debasement. It's a choice they're making. They are voluntarily getting upon their knees to worship at the throne of the dear leader, Donald Trump, even at the expense of their own dignity and shame. We witnessed it with Ted Cruz after Donald Trump calling his wife ugly, accusing his father of having something to do with the assassination of a president. And Ted Cruz, he could not get down upon the knees fast enough to gargle the ball bag of Donald Trump. Sorry, sometimes it just got to be me on YouTube. The other day, Donald Trump, as you well know, I talked about just the racial comments at the the National Association of Black Journalists. And Donald Trump made a few different comments. And I'm glad that JD Vance did this thing because it gives me a chance to talk about some of these other moments. But there was a moment where Donald Trump was asked about why he picked JD Vance. And this comes right on the heels of him saying all the racist trash about Kamala Harris all of a sudden becoming black or suddenly become, however he phrased it. And Harris Faulkner jumps in to try to save the day, to try to extricate Donald Trump from himself before this audience. And she asks about why you picked JD Vance. And his answer was what you would expect. It's nonsense and it meanders all over the place. But ultimately he lands on, it doesn't matter. JD, it doesn't matter who I pick. Unimportant. The vice president is unimportant, he says, about the guy he picked to be vice president. Anyway, JD Vance was asked about this. We're going to get to that. But first, just as a reminder, here are those comments from the National Association of Black Journalists convention in Chicago.
The last time you and I sat and talked was the day that you were shot. We'd been together for much of that day. You left to go to Butler, Pennsylvania, and we didn't know what was next.
Yeah.
And 2 days after that...
I cannot understand. Your microphone
I know,
is so
it is really hard for me to
it's
understand
just,
you too.
I can understand you perfectly.
Because she's closer.
I can understand you.
I'm happy to hear that, sir.
But I can't
really
understand, Harris.
I have a few more questions.
Because of the distance, and the mics are really in lousy shape, but I cannot understand
Are you asking a question?
what you're saying.
So what I wanted to say was the last time we spoke, you said some words that were prophetic because I asked you who you wanted to choose for vice president.
Yeah.
And you said normally it really wouldn't matter what they would bring, you choose somebody that you think has a future, that sort of thing. But you said these words 3.5 hours before an attempted assassination on your life. You told me that bad things happen, Harris. And that's why this decision is important this time. Bad things happen. You said it twice. When you look at JD Vance, is he ready on day one?
Does he what?
Ready on day one, if he has to be.
I've always had great respect for him, and for the other candidates too. But I will say this, and I think this is well documented. Historically, the vice president, in terms of the election, does not have any impact. I mean, virtually no impact. You have 2 or 3 days where there's a lot of commotion as to who, like you're having it on the Democrat side, who it's going to be. And then that dies down, and it's all about the presidential pick. Virtually never has it mattered. Maybe Lyndon Johnson mattered for different reasons of what we're talking about, not for vote reasons, but for political reasons, other political reasons. But historically, the choice of a vice president makes no difference. You're voting for the president, and you can have a vice president who's outstanding in every way, and I think JD is. I think that all of them would have been. But you're not voting that way. You're voting for the president. You're voting for me. If you like me, I'm going to win. If you don't like me, I'm not going to win.
A number of different things there, just still just an unmitigated disaster that they had Harris Faulkner on the stage. She's not a journalist. She's a propagandist. She's an infotainment artist. She worked for Fox News, and she's not a straight news person. She is absolutely fostering opinion through propaganda. But The other thing is how Harris Faulkner framed it. First, gushing over Donald Trump about the assassination attempt, and then saying that he had prophetic words. Again, this is signaling. I talk about white Christian nationalism all the time. I talk about the amalgam trying to mix religion and politics. It's just the same thing. You had prophetic words, dear leader. Oh. But then for him to say that historically, the choice of vice president makes no difference. It's so good. So JD Vance was asked about this, and his response is just, which is to say, he admits it. Yeah, I don't mean anything. You're right. Everybody's going to vote for Donald Trump. I have to agree with whatever Donald Trump says. Yeah. Donald Trump is right. I'm meaningless. Watch the absolute humiliation, self-inflicted humiliation of JD Vance.
He was also asked yesterday if you were ready to be president on day one. He kind of dodged the question. What do you still have to do as his running mate to prove to him that you are ready to step into that role?
Well, I think Donald Trump was answering a political question, and he was answering it correctly. He said for years that who the vice president is doesn't really matter politically. Most Americans are voting either for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump. They're not voting for the vice presidential nominee of either party. Look, I'm absolutely ready to be president on day one. I've been a businessman. I've been a United States Marine. I've been a senator. I can do the job, but politically, he's just right. People are voting for Donald Trump primarily.
So why are you out here today then if you aren't necessary to this process?
Well, I didn't say I wasn't necessary to the process. I can certainly make an argument that borders are Kamala Harris has failed the American people, but I think ultimately they're going to be voting either for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump.
I'm absolutely ready on day one, but also completely unnecessary. I was a corporal in the United States Marine. Of course I'm ready to be president of the United States. Why does JD Vance look like a bearded toddler, by the way? I'm just watching the clip, and he's got this giant pumpkin head, and that's coming from somebody with a very sizable melon. What is happening here? Anyway, I would love to know what you think. What's your take on the continued, just nonstop embarrassment and humiliation as they worship at the throne of the dear leader, Donald Trump? No matter what he says, even if it's at their expense, they agree with it. You can leave a comment below. That would be fantastic. You could also leave me a voicemail, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com. Follow me on social media. I'm at Dollemore everywhere there. I'd love to see you. And if you're looking for ways to support the channel, stick around and support this sponsor, Ground News, as a way to support this channel. I recently posted a video about Judge Cannon dismissing Trump's classified documents case. Look, it's easy to feel helpless being faced with discordant news and headlines like this. I know the feeling. Trust me, I know the feeling. But look, we're not in a position in our country or indeed our world where a single one of us can tune out. We need to stay in this political fight. And the best way to do that is to stay informed. One incredible tool I use is Ground News, a completely apolitical and independent app and website that gathers related articles from across the political spectrum. Ground News allows readers to compare coverage to see who is spinning what narrative to their own end. Knowledge is power, right? It's not just a saying. So you had better empower the information you're getting with Ground News. Scan the QR code below or go to ground.news/Dollemore right now to score 40% off their Vantage plan, which allows you unlimited access. Ground News gives you a summary of each news story showing where the left, center, and right have focused their reporting, along with a visual representation of each news outlet's political bias, their funding, and thus their credibility. You can then compare coverage with full insight on any bias twisting the story. But you can take it even deeper. With their blind spot feed, Ground News sheds light on important news that's receiving insufficient coverage from both the left and the right, which is something I try to do on this very show. You cannot change something if you're not aware of it. Empower the information you are getting by heading to ground.news/Dollemore or just scan my QR code below to save 40% off the exact same unlimited access Vantage plan that I use for this show. By signing up, you'll be supporting not one, but two independent platforms working to make media more transparent. Ground News and the Dollemore Daily. Empower your knowledge with Ground News.